Everybody waiting to hear from the speaker.
Yeas pour 156, 156. Nays contre 145, 145.
The suspense is over, and there's the tradition of throwing those papers in the air. There will be an election.
I met with His Excellency the Governor General, and he has agreed that Parliament should be dissolved.
I can't be clearer than that.
You're not clear at all, sir, actually. Do you believe that a coalition is a legitimate parliamentary option that you will pursue?
I've answered that question in the past.
Canadians need to understand clearly, without any ambiguity, unless Canadians elect a stable national government, Mr. Ignatieff will form a coalition with the NDP and Bloc Québécois. Imagine a coalition of arch centralists and Quebec sovereignists trying to work together. The only thing they'll be able to agree on is to spend more money and to raise taxes to pay for it.
At a time of economic uncertainty, does it make sense to jeopardize our recovery with an unnecessary election? Let's ask Michael Ignatieff.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Ignatieff, he didn't come back for you.
Against this backdrop of growing economic risk and against our advice, the opposition parties have chosen to force an election the country doesn't want, an election the economy doesn't need.
So here we have it. We are heading into an election, or as Stephen Harper calls it, a dangerous and unnecessary exercise. Because as we all know, Canada is one of the world's greatest democracies, and the greatest threat to that democracy is that we get to vote.
To my fellow Canadians, I say this. The opposition parties have made their choice. Now we, Canadians, get to make ours.
Let me repeat with the greatest respect. There's a blue door. There's a red door. We're going to form a Liberal government. Is that clear enough for you? Thank you.
But so far we've heard a lot of Mrs. Ignatieff and Harper talking about coalition and fighting between themselves. How do you get in the discussion? It's still early, but how do you do that?
You offered, you remember that whole mano a mano thing?
Yeah.
You know, any place, any time?
Yeah.
Stephen Harper offers to have a one-on-one debate with Michael Ignatieff. Michael Ignatieff says any place, any time. Then it kind of falls apart. But you made what was no doubt a well-intentioned, in the finest traditions of civilian journalism of the country, you offered to host it, right?
Yes.
Having another debate with just Ignatieff and Harper, would you think they would go for that, and what would you do if that happened?
Well, it doesn't surprise me to hear Mr. Harper wanting to exclude the New Democrats, because, of course, we're the ones who stand up to him most forcefully. Mr. Ignatieff sided with him 100 times in the last Parliament, so in some ways this very anti-democratic approach that he's recommending doesn't surprise me a bit. I don't think it's right. I don't think Canadians would accept it. It really prejudges the position of Canadians, and it essentially tries to replicate some kind of an American approach to politics, which I don't think we want to see here.
I was listening to you again today, and it just seems to me that you talk about the possibility of being Prime Minister more than I think I've ever heard you talk about it before. Is it, or how realistic is it, to think of going from number 4 to number 1?
But there's never been a new Democratic federal government, as Mr. Ignatieff pointed out, and he suggested yesterday that what you're asking is sort of a little bit unreasonable. Sure, go ahead and ask it, but it's never going to come to fruition.
I mean, here we are in the province where the first CCF-NDP government was elected. They used to say to Tommy Douglas, there isn't a hope that the CCF, your party, will ever be elected and you'll never become Premier. But you see, the thing about New Democrats and about Tommy Douglas is he never took that kind of negativism. He always believed in the hopeful future. And we've been building our party election by election to the point now where I don't think that Mr. Ignatieff's point is particularly credible anymore.
But it's still the Prime Minister, though. I mean, have you got the votes? Have you got the seats? Are you able to win this?
That is entirely up to Canadians, and we're making that pitch, and I see more and more Canadians coming our way.
I don't think I'm going to give up my day job.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be voting for Mr. Mulcair in this election.
But it's a big gap, 4 to 1. Sure. It's hard beyond Afghanistan to see the difference between you and the Liberal Party, other than the leader.
The difference is in the record. The Liberals have been in power before. The biggest cuts to health care came under the Liberals.
But is that the only difference, the fact that they were in power? But is that the major difference between you and the Liberals? Is that you don't have a record in power, so you don't have to defend whether you broke it or not?
One day after Michael Ignatieff turfed a Quebec candidate for being a white supremacist, his campaign stop at a senior's home was sidetracked by yet another controversy. Former provincial judge John Riley, running as a big-name Liberal hopeful in the Alberta riding of Wildrose, told the radio station jail sentences are unnecessary for certain types of sexual assault.
Well, you know, there are sexual assaults and there are sexual assaults.
Sure.
Riley cited the example of a young man who he says should not have been jailed for sexual assault against his girlfriend.
He fondles her privates, and she wakes up and tells him to go away, and he goes away.
The winds of change are blowing, and I'm afraid they're going to blow these signs right off.
Now some lovely weather, kind of mixed in Victoria and Vancouver. Calgary at 2 degrees, Edmonton at 6, -1 in Yellowknife. The other party leaders just left there. I'll be getting up there and try and warm things up soon.
I think I make the rules. Yeah? Too bad you guys can't do it.
Do-do-da-loot-do.
Do-do-da-loot-do.
Almost do-do-da-loot-do.
Do-do-da-loot-do.
Almost do-do-da-loot-do.
Do-do-da-loot-do.
You almost got it, Mr. Ignatieff. You got the hip flip. All you got to do, do-do-da-loot-do.
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 Do-do-da-loot.
Oh, I see. Do-do-da-loot-do.
Do-do.
Let's see if we can move a little bit towards the Manitoba and Saskatchewan. There we are at 5 in Winnipeg, -2 in Thompson, -14 in Iqaluit, probably the low marker for today. Generally cooler than we normally see. Thunder Bay at 5. Now look at that sunny weather.
Canadians don't like the fact that Mr. Harper appoints his Conservative Party activists and campaign fundraisers to the Senate to be paid by the public dime. And they don't like the fact that they're up on fraud charges. And they don't like the fact that he takes defeated candidates who Canadians have rejected and stuffs them into the Senate. And they don't like the fact that those same people in some cases now are turning around while they're collecting that salary and running again for office. This kind of thing really rubs people the wrong way. The Senate is fundamentally undemocratic. They're not elected. And now they're out there actually blocking legislation on important issues like climate change. And I tell you, Canadians find that offensive, especially after Mr. Harper promised that he would do things differently. He clearly broke that promise.
In Montreal and Ottawa area, a little bit of cloud, a little mix there. Quebec City, beautiful. What a wonderful city. Always gorgeous there at 5 degrees. But
you are never going to be Prime Minister, and a vote for your party is a wasted vote. What are you telling Quebecers today?
Voici le chef du NPD, Jack Layton.
Bravo l'esprit d'équipe, un petit mon crampé en masse, mon ouais, mon gars, gravir les échelons, comprendre mon patron, faire semblant, qui est intéressant.
In the Maritimes, of course, there we've got a little bit of weather happening. And Corner Brook's got a little cloud today. Labrador, once again, rain and...
Two leaders with two plans for the economy. With Stephen Harper, you keep taxes low. With Michael Ignatieff, you raise taxes. With Harper, you control spending and balance the budget. With Ignatieff, you raise taxes. With Harper, you keep creating jobs. With Ignatieff, you raise taxes.
I'm not going to take a GST hike off the table.
We're in safe hands with Stephen Harper. With so much at stake, why would we risk changing course?
For a financial institution to lend money if their rate's capped.
The financial institutions will do just fine.
The average CEO now will go into his office on the first working day of the year, January the 2nd, and by the time he has his morning coffee, he will have already earned more than an average Canadian worker earns during the entire course of the year.
I think some control over the rates that they're charging is absolutely essential, because let's remember, we have very large banks in Canada. There's not a lot of competition one to the other, and the result is that you've got to have government standing on the side of the people to provide some sort of protection here.
Listen, don't take this the wrong way, but you sound like a left-wing nutbar.
Why should Canadians have the highest rates and charges in the world? That's what my challenge back to the banks. Explain that to me. Are we such terrible credit risks that we have to have the highest credit rates in the world? I don't think so.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, and here we go again. A federal election debate among the 4 leaders of Canada's major political parties. And here is our first question of the evening. It's on the economy. Roll tape, please.
My name is Robert Belita from Newmarket, Ontario. My question is this: how can the Conservative Party justify a $6 billion tax cut to corporations when Canadian families are struggling to make ends meet? Is this policy not simply putting more money in the pockets of wealthy corporations who have failed to share their wealth in the past?
Okay, Mr. Harper, it's right to you for the first response on corporate tax cuts.
Well, first of all, there are no corporate tax reductions in our current budget. We cut taxes several years ago across the board, not just for businesses big and small, also for consumers, the cut to the GST, for individuals and for families. The question in this election is whether taxes should be raised back up. Our position is clear. The Canadian economy has been performing well, coming out of this recession, stronger and faster than others. It's creating jobs. If you raise taxes, all you will do is impose costs on consumers and employees, cost this economy jobs, and hurt ordinary families.
Okay,
so this party doesn't favor raising taxes.
This is the one-on-one segment.
Yes, I would first like to congratulate Mr. Harper for answering a question from a citizen for the first time in this campaign.
You keep using this word bickering. This isn't bickering, Mr. Harper. This is democracy. This is a debate. It's not some pesky little irrelevance that gets in the way of your power. This is how democracy works. I ask questions. I hold you accountable. It isn't bickering. This is what democracy is about. It's about time you respected it.
I have to pick up on something Mr. Ignatieff said. He said before you have to walk the walk and you have to be a strong leader and respect Parliament. I've got to ask you then, why do you have the worst attendance record in the House of Commons of any member of Parliament? If you want to be Prime Minister, you better learn how to be a member of Parliament first. You know, most Canadians, if they don't show up for work, they don't get a promotion.
Mr. Layton, I don't surrender to anybody in my respect for the institution of Parliament and my obligation to the people who put me there. So don't give me lessons about respect for democracy.
Well,
don't give me lessons.
Where
don't
were
give
you
me
when
lessons
I was
for
there
respect
standing up to Mr. Harper and voting against his policies, and you weren't in the chamber? You missed 70% of the votes. I think you need to understand a little bit more about how our democracy works. That's my only point.
But, Mr. Layton, if I
can... Hang on. Here in Canada, Canadians decide who's going to be the Prime Minister. Not you and not your party.
Jack.
There's something wrong with the system that when a party, the Bloc Québécois, we'll pick that example, has 1.3 million votes and gets 50 seats in the House. And we've got the Green Party that gets 900,000 votes, not that far behind the Bloc, they get 0 seats. It's time that we had proportional representation in this country so that we had a proper representation of everybody's point of view when it comes to that House of Commons. And by the way, while we're at it, let's stop the undemocratic Senate from doing what it does, and it should be abolished in our opinion, wasteful and expensive and a repository for political friends. Let's get rid of it and let's test the Canadian people on that one. Let's really fix what's wrong in Ottawa.
Let me address that question.
The NDP is probably most interesting. It might be premature what they're doing, but they're clearly signaling that they think they do have a shot at second, and that one of the ways of getting that is to, move the Liberals right down to the low 20s.
Looks to me like the Liberals were always the big goose of federal politics, and both of them are plucking it in front of our eyes. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter that we say it wasn't so bad, because in many regions of the country, the West, Quebec, there is no Liberal infrastructure.
Yes.
As good as Mr. Ignatieff can be, he's not going to win Alberta or Francophone Quebec. Not going to happen.
Jack, do you believe that marijuana should be legalized?
Well, I think it's an important issue to debate. There's a lot of issues associated with it. Marijuana's changed a lot since my youth. I can tell you that. So I'm informed.
You mean it's now? Is that what you're saying?
I'm told it's a heck of a lot stronger, and I'm told there's a whole lot of issues associated with it that need to be discussed. But you know, the approach the Conservatives tend to take, which is to put a criminal cast on absolutely everything, seems that they don't like, I don't see as the most positive way to go.
It happened inside the University Center Wednesday afternoon. According to students, a campaign worker for Conservative candidate Marty Burke showed up. Student Brenna Anstedt says she was marking her ballot at a table.
A guy walked up, made a big scene, was claiming that the station was illegal, and went to grab for the box. I didn't see if he got his hand on it.
Student Colin Cooper says he saw it from his place at the front of the line of voters.
He was saying that it wasn't a recognized poll, and he put his hand on the ballot box. And I think he was just gesturing towards it, but then they told him, you know, you can't touch the ballot box. And they moved the ballot box, and they told him you have to get back because he was interrupting the voting.
Getting back to marijuana, the party's always...
How come you're so interested in marijuana?
I may need some.
Last night, it was not the reception that Michael Ignatieff was hoping for, as he got booed by people at an Ontario Hockey League playoff game. Still, the Liberal leader shook off the sounds of disapproval and waved to the crowd at the Hershey Centre in Mississauga. The city is located in the vote-rich 905 area of southern Ontario.
First up, ECOS, which was out again this morning with some fresh material. Let's have a look at that board right now, and you'll see that blue line, as you mentioned, running straight across the top. And then you see the crossover between the red line, I guess you call it a pumpkin line rather than orange, the NDP in second place, and that's been the case for 3 days now. Next we have Harris Decima, which was out yesterday, and the line looks more dramatic there, but that's because they are a week apart in terms of their reporting, so longer distance in time makes that stick up a little further, but the same idea. NDP in second, Liberals in third, Tories up in first. Finally, the Nanos poll, one which is a daily tracking poll, so it's a longer line. It goes all the way back to the start of the campaign, and as you can see, the gradual rise of the NDP and the yellow-orange there, crossing over with the Liberals, Tories still on top. So that's what the lay of the land is today.
Well, the federal election is down to one last weekend, and a fight to the finish no one could have expected. Jack Layton and the NDP continue to ride a surprising surge in public support, while the other parties struggle to stop the bleeding, especially in vote-rich Ontario. Bob, you've been traveling with the Liberals and the Conservatives over the last several days, but first off tonight, there's a story out there that NDP leader Jack Layton was mentioned in a police officer's memorandum several years ago. What more can you tell us about that?
Lloyd, Sun Media is reporting that Jack Layton was found at a massage parlor and questioned by police 16 years ago. NDP lawyers say he was with a legitimate therapist and he did not know that other illicit activities may have been taking place at the establishment. His wife, Olivia Chow, says she knew of the incident, and she says insinuations of wrongdoing are utterly false. Here's what Mr. Layton said tonight.
Fortunate to see the smear campaign starting in these last few days of the campaign. Absolutely nothing wrong was done. There's no wrongdoing here, but yet the smears start.
All right, well, moving on then, Bob.
Well, Lloyd, I think it's back to the future. If the polls are to be believed, we're going to be faced with another minority parliament. The only difference is going to be that it's going to be the NDP as the official opposition. Conservatives are acknowledging privately that their support in Quebec is caving, and the only way they're going to be able to win a majority is to make up those gains in Ontario, and that may be difficult. And more good news for Jack Layton. Tomorrow, the Toronto Star, the biggest booster of the Liberal Party, will be endorsing the NDP.
Bin Laden's death does not end the threat of international terrorism. Sadly, others will take his place. But this does remind us why Canadian Armed Forces personnel have been deployed to Afghanistan.
Rise up. Rise up. Rise up, Canada. Rise up. Rise up. Why do we have to put up with this? Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. This goes beyond partisan politics. This goes beyond the Liberal Party. This is about our country.
Well, I think warmest congratulations to Prime Minister Harper. He will be the first Conservative leader in 50 years since Mr. Diefenbaker to win a majority and 2 minorities, and that's a tremendous accomplishment. And Jack Layton, who's gone from pretty well nowhere to a remarkable success tonight, and he deserves great congratulations as well. So it's a very exciting night, unexpectedly so, Lloyd.
Merci, messieurs amis. Thank you, my friend.
And why do you think this has happened, sir?
Well, I think that the Conservative government was re-elected because of its economic competence. They made that the issue in the campaign, as well as the need for a majority and a stable approach to some of the problems we're going to encounter. And I think that Mr. Layton successfully became the incarnation of change beginning in Quebec. People were fed up with the Bloc Québécois, and he emerged as a symbol of change, somewhat surprisingly because he had been around for a while, but always perceived, as they say in Quebec, as un bon Jack, a good guy. And he was born here, raised here. His father was, I was privileged to have him in my cabinet and caucus, and as I've said before, Bob Layton, his dad, was one of the finest men ever to sit on the floor of the House of Commons. And so Jack has some of those attributes.
You are amazing. Thank you for being here to celebrate, and let me tell you this. Spring is here, my friends, and a new chapter begins.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Quelle belle soirée. What a great night. And friends, I have to say it. A strong, stable, national majority Conservative government.
A short while ago, I spoke to Stephen Harper, and I congratulated him on his victory. It's a significant accomplishment, my friends, and a heavy responsibility. And I join all Canadians in wishing him well. I let Mr. Harper know that I look forward to working with his party, and in fact, all parties, to get things done for our families.
And what do you make of the Liberals coming out third? First time ever for them being the third party.
I think, Lloyd, that is the story of this evening. That is if you're looking for historical import, and we've just mentioned two that are significant, Mr. Harper's victory, Mr. Layton's victory, but in history, I think the larger one, or the largest one, will probably be what has happened to the famous Liberal brand tonight. For 110 years, the Liberal Party dominated Canadian politics because of its unbelievable strength here in the province of Quebec.
Democracy teaches hard lessons.
and we have to learn them all. We have to be big enough, open-hearted enough, courageous enough to read the lessons that the Canadian people have taught our party tonight. Leaders have to be big enough also to accept their historic responsibility for a historic defeat, and I do so. That's what leaders are there for.
And now that has gone, as, for example, the National Energy Program drove away the Western support, the patriation of the Constitution over the objections of Federalists and Separatists in Quebec, hurt them badly here. And the culmination of it all is what you see tonight. The Liberal Party, the once great Liberal Party, in some significant difficulty. And a legitimate question is, given the success of the NDP and its positioning now, is there an important role for the Liberals in the future?
I would also like to congratulate Michael Ignatieff on a hard-fought and respectful campaign. While the results were clearly not what he and the Liberals were hoping for, Mr. Ignatieff put forward a vision of Canada focused on strengthening health care and helping out families, and New Democrats share these values.